Hello, and welcome to Machine Learning in Excel, or Creating Decision Trees by me, Dr. Alan Brain. To create our decision tree, we'll be using the chi-square statistic. Introduction to statistics presentations have introduced the basics of chi-square already, so I will not be going over this again in this presentation. So what are decision trees? Decision trees display the mapping of complex behavior into a simple diagram using a combination of statistical tools and common sense. Simple rules can be created to provide key insight. They are mainly used to create rules for a binary outcome. Yes or no. Typical. So this is an example of a decision tree. It's clearly labelled. At the beginning we have the root, and this split, so it is then split later on into the branches. And at the end of a branch is a node. And when we finally get to the very end of our decision tree, these are called the terminal nodes, or they are sometimes referred to as a leaf. So in our example here, we want to know if people are interested to do DIY on that day. And it's made up. But our first query we want to look at, was there any sports on television? Now we can see those were said they're not interested in sport, but no, then there is no significant split. It's the only way you look at the weather do you see that if it's raining, people are more likely to do DIY, but then if it's not, then they're most likely not to do DIY. And as you can tell, this tells a very simple story. Decision trees can create a story which is simple to follow and understand. Now there are two ways how you can complete this presentation. You can download the information from the website drbrainstats.com and you click on a link. This is a link that provides all of the key information in one of my books. Or B, you can just read through the examples as I talk through them. Now, if you have downloaded the files, there is an Excel workbook called binary, and it has a response variable called sold, which is equal to 1 if a sale has been made and 0 otherwise. This workbook also contains 3 predictor variables: income, mortgage percentage, and tier. The variable tier takes on the values 1 to 4. Tiers with a rank of 1 have the highest prestige, with those with 4 the lowest. Now we want to know if there is a population that we can target effectively. To create our decision tree, we need to convert our continuous variables into categorical ones. To do this, we'll be making sure that each of our categorical variables will have an equal number of targets in each bin. This requires creating a new spreadsheet with all the columns, but only where the sold column equaled 1. So we will sort the Excel spreadsheet by sold, largest to smallest, and we'll copy and paste all this data where the sold flag equals 1 into a new worksheet. With our new sheet created, based purely on the sold population, we want to sort this new sheet by income. As we want each bin to have roughly the same number of targets, we will need to record the values at each quarter. So at line 22, 44 and 66, we will need to record the income values. There is no need to know the highest number, as any number after the 3/4 mark, 6,800, will represent our fourth and final bin. This exercise is then repeated for mortgage percentage. So we're going to create our new columns. Now there are 2 ways you can do this. The first method is the simplest but could be tiresome if we have data over 10,000 rows. First, sort the Excel sheet by income, and in column F, label it income group. Populate this new column where appropriate, and then repeat for a new column called mortgage group. For version 2, we could use an if statement. I will briefly describe the income group if statement. So you can see we've got the if statement there, open bracket. Now C2 is less than 5,200 label it 5200 and enter. Now we have a comma. This tells us the next if statement. And after that, another comma. We have our next statement. And lastly, because there's no if statement, after that, just a comma, it is 6801 and above, our final burn. Now, please note the number of brackets at the end, otherwise this will cause it to error. And repeat for mortgage. And the final stage for our data is to create a new column called count, which equals 1 all the way down. What follows next is the creation of a pivot table. This will allow us to analyze our variables with ease. So our first point is to calculate the observed. Now, as you know, the chi-square compares the observed against the expected. So the observed is our actual result. So in our pivot table, we will investigate tier first. So that is dragged into the rows box. And into the values, we want count and sold. Our next stage involves calculating the observed, the actual readings. So within our pivot table, we'll be creating a new calculated field as shown on this slide. Our calculated field is equal to sold divided by count. We have now got our observed field. Now, to make this sheet more aesthetically pleasing, we have changed the format slightly as shown on the slide. All of this information is available in the book. Now, we need to know our expected sales. We need to compare the observed against the expected value. Overall, there is a 29.87% sales rate. So for each tier, we need to calculate 29.87% of the total number of customers in each bin. So we'll get our expected value. This requires a new calculated field called expected sales. Again, we'll be creating a calculated field with a formula count times 0.2987. So now we have our final pivot table. We've got our expected and we've got our actual figures. We can now calculate the chi-square. And now finally, we can now start calculating our chi-square. Our first variable will be tier. As we can see, the formula for chi-test is shown on this sheet. So for tier, chi-square value is 1.5386%. This is below our 5% mark, so it is therefore good. Next, we will calculate our chi-square for income group. This is quite simple to calculate. All we do is swap over tier to income group on our pivot table. For income group, our chi-square is 0.58, 58.397%. This is very high, therefore bad. And finally, we do the same for mortgage group. This gives us a value of 0.23237 or 23.237%. This is high, therefore bad. And now we got our chi-square results. Based on the chi-square results, the first branch to be created will be using the variable tier, as it has the lowest chi-square statistic and satisfies the under 5% rule. If no values satisfied the 5% rule, we would need to consider whether it would be wise to build a decision tree or not. So our first branch will contain the following figures. As you will see, there is a new variable created called not sold. This is simply total minus total sold. And finally, we can start to create our decision tree. Using the border button, we can simply create the decision tree based on the most powerful variable. In our case, was tier. And we can see all the key information written down. Now, if some people prefer decision trees with colour, to do this, we can use a conditional formatting, as shown here. And now we have our final decision tree. So now we'll go back to the original question. Is there a population where we can target cost effectively? While we're using the decision tree, we would recommend targeting those customers in Tier 1 and 2. Tier 1 is more than 2.5 times more likely to buy than Tier 4. So, our conclusion. Creating a decision tree in Excel is straightforward when the data is small. Additionally, it does not take much work to make the figures look presentable. But as always with data mining, machine learning, the majority of the time is taken up cleaning the data. Rarely is data ready to use, and you should always check your data first, else you would present useless analysis. Thank you. Additional material is available in these books on website.